فكرتي كان التأييد.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Future TV. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Speaker Nabih Berri says tomorrow's parliamentary session to elect a new head of state will be open-ended until the end of President Michel Sleiman's term on the 25th of this month. Maronite organizations warn lawmakers against disrupting the vote and failing to elect a new president on time. And Amnesty International says underfunded medical institutions in Lebanon are incapable or unwilling to treat many Syrian refugees, rendering vulnerable populations at risk of financial ruin, disability, and death. Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri says Thursday's parliamentary session to elect a new head of state will be open-ended until the expiry of President Michel Sleiman's term on the 25th of this month. A session which Hezbollah MPs promised to boycott. MPs from Michel Aoun's Parliamentary Change and Reform bloc also say they will not attend the session in the absence of any agreement over a consensus candidate. Lawmakers have botched 4 attempts to elect a new head of state in less than a month due to a lack of quorum between the March 8 and 14 rivals. Sleiman sent a letter last week to Parliament urging lawmakers to elect a new president to avoid the risks that will ensue if successor is not elected this week. We now turn to Yumna Naufal for the exclusive.
Thank you, Linda. In the absence of an agreement between the March 14 and March 8 coalitions over a consensus presidential candidate to break the impasse, analysts are predicting that Thursday's session is likely to fail. The country is entering the stage of a vacuum at the helm of the country's top Christian post after opposing political parties have failed thus far after 4 meetings to agree on a candidate, and reports say that the post is expected to remain vacant for several months. We have the pleasure to welcome in our studios today Free Patriotic Movement MP Alain Aoun. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Michel Aoun's MPs, along with those of Hezbollah, are planning to boycott the parliament session tomorrow, right?
It's not a boycott. It's our right of abstention in case there is no consensus that would lead to elect a president. Actually, the session tomorrow will not lead to any election because we know the parliamentary bloc's positions, and today the balance of power in the parliament doesn't allow any of the candidates to get 65 votes which allow him to be elected, which means that actually tomorrow, as far as the position didn't change, there is no election for president, and therefore we're not boycotting the election of president. We're just marking a point, pushing and pressuring everyone to go for a consensus instead of staying at the same positions.
Okay, but so far there have been 4 meetings, and May 25th is this Sunday, and this is probably the last meeting before the May 25th deadline. So aren't you afraid that a political vacuum might have some disastrous consequences?
We don't like, of course, to reach the vacuum, but
isn't that what's next?
It's happening actually, but it's happening because also the parliamentary blocs are still stubborn on their position of supporting one candidate that has no perspective to win or no chance to win.
You're talking about Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja?
Yes, because they tried his candidacy and it showed that it has a limit, that it cannot go further. So why to remain on the same positions? Why to stick to the same position and paralyzing the game and the
What is your solution? What is your bloc solution?
The solution is what we're trying to do. We are negotiating with the other blocs, parliament, and especially the Future movement, trying to find a consensus. We're not just saying we're not going to this parliament and just sitting in our houses and waiting for something to happen. No, we are proactive. We are going into negotiations. We are going into discussions. We are trying to build a platform of consensus in the country in order to be able to elect a president at some point. But unfortunately, things didn't mature enough yet. And at the same time, the positions today of March 14, as far as they are still the same, it's preventing the presidency from milestone from progressing.
How come your party as well has not offered a candidate in order to see, since you cannot
We
agree
have
on
a natural candidate, everyone knows that.
Okay.
It's not a
but
question
he hasn't
of
come
just...
forth yet.
So what? It's not a question of just declaring himself candidate. It's a question of now what interests us is to get him elected and not just score some points and score some votes. We're not interested in this game. Maybe some want to show... to do some show off. We're not interested in that.
But
we
like
are interested in getting him elected, and to get him elected, it's a question of getting these discussions reach a breakthrough somehow, and this is what we're trying to do.
You said and you mentioned the future movement meetings that you've had, which have thus far reached no conclusion. Where do you stand now?
Not concluded because things takes time. Trust building needs time. Things need to be mature actually, and this is something
but we're running out of time. So what's going to happen? We're running out of time.
What is in stake is so important that it's not a question of sacrificing it just for a few days more or a few days less. We will not just let's say sacrifice all that because we have a milestone. We are ready actually to finish now. But seems from the future side, it needs more time.
So you're just saying that basically the future movement is to blame for the fact that it's
I'm not saying it's to blame. I'm saying that the process of negotiation with them is still taking some time. It didn't mature enough, especially on their side, which means that they are not ready today to conclude or take a final decision. And therefore, things will take a little bit more time than expected.
President Michel Sleiman said he's worried that the election of any of Lebanon's 4 key Maronite political leaders could trigger acts of revenge. He says he does not support any specific candidate for the presidential seat. What do you think MP Michel Aoun has to offer to Lebanon that we haven't seen in other
candidates?
First,
I think that the President Sleiman doesn't have the right to say that because he's like making a sort of trial of intentions, It's just condemning them that they will do revenge. Who said they will take revenge? Who said that
it's his personal opinion.
Yeah, so we disagree with that. Anyway.
What does MP Michel Aoun has to offer to Lebanon, you believe?
Today, MP Michel Aoun had an added value compared to all the other candidates. He has first something that no one has. He has the ability to talk with everyone. The capacity of, let's say, securing any deal that would happen between the main political forces of the country. He has the weight on the Christian level, he has a credibility on the Shia level, and he has the capacity of building a new strong deal with the other partners like the Sunni partner, which means that he has a capacity that no one has today, that no one can offer from the other candidates, and therefore he has a real added value. And the difference between Aoun and all the others is that all the others would be sort of a continuity for what we have lived already.
So what do you think?
The same balance of power in the country,
new?
the same continuity, crisis management, etc. Aoun becoming president is something completely new for the country, because this will reshuffle all the cards, and this will lead us to a new equation that is completely different from what we have lived during the last years with this March 8 and 14 divisions and these.
But don't you think Aoun in the presidential post will also keep the country divided? It is currently very divided. And
on the contrary, he will be in a position of uniting the country actually and finding common grounds between the opponents.
Which is what he's trying to do right now with the future movement, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
But what is it that's keeping it from coming forth? Because I think all the candidates know there's a pressing time and there's a pressing deadline. In terms of, and I'm sure you know, what is it that you're hearing in terms of these meetings?
Well, we're making things progress as much as we can, as fast as we can. But it's not only about us. It's only about it's about the other partners also, and the future partner mainly. And this is something that I understand that it can take time. We're coming from opposite sides. We're starting a constructive, positive dialogue, and this requires requires time for trust building, for giving guarantees, for agreeing on common objectives for the future, for dealing with discrepancies we might have on some issues. All these things it has to reach a final solid agreement between two parties that were so much at odds at a certain period. It's not a question of a day or two. It's a question of time.
Right, but in terms of, everybody's talking about this political vacuum, aren't you afraid that the consequences might eventually lead to security, which has so far stabilized in the last few months? What do you think the consequences are going to be of a vacuum?
We'll have a political crisis, but
define political crisis.
But because we have a vacancy in the presidency, this is something that is unusual. This is something that is not normal. This is a sign of crisis. But I see it a soft crisis. I don't see it a tense one, because today there's an appeasement in the relationship between all the parties. Although the presidency is still pending, but still I don't see it very tense. So I foresee a political crisis, true, but I don't see it very dangerous.
Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnout said that extending the mandate of President Michel Sleiman is justified. Do you think that's an option?
I don't think this is, at least from our side, we don't see it as a solution. Because what we aim for is trying to really to have a new start in the country, not extending what we live already. Therefore, we believe, first as principle, we don't want to change the constitution. This is a principle and a position that we always had. And at the same time, we foresee the presidency as a real occasion, as a good opportunity to move forward in the country, not extending actually what we are living already.
My last question to you is, Maronite Patriarch Shaddai is to join Pope Francis on his May 24-26 tour of the Holy Land, and this is drawing a lot of criticism from a lot of people in Lebanon.
I think we have to stop this.
What is your stance?
Everyone has said what he has to say. Now,
what is your bloc stance on?
Now, everyone, I don't want to. This has reached so much a certain level of discussion and of attacks, etc.
Do you agree? Do you think it's okay?
It doesn't allow any more rational discussion about it. This is why now we have to put it behind us. The Patriarch will go on his visit. We wish him good luck in what he will do. And I want really this page to be turned and stop this
discussing it. So you think it's okay for him to go and to basically visit
whatever advice or opinion I have, after all what happened, I will not say it anymore. I would say now I would say I wish him good luck to go and come back and stop this from now on. This will be a religious
visit,
and let's stick to that regardless of our opinions that we know all here and there.
From a country where opinions differ on a daily basis.
Exactly.
Thank you for being with us. That was Free Patriotic Movement MP, Mr. Alain On with us. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Yumna. And coming up next, an Egyptian court sentences deposed President Hosni Mubarak to 3 years in prison for corruption charges. Stay tuned.
Anna.
Welcome back. Amnesty International states that funding shortfalls and medical care gaps in Lebanon are forcing Syrian refugees to forego treatment, run up huge debts, or return to their war-ravaged homeland. Amnesty praises Lebanon for continuing to accept refugees and called on the international community to increase funding for the UN Syria Crisis Response Plan to increase support to Lebanon and other regional host nations. An Egyptian court has sentenced deposed President Hosni Mubarak to 3 years in prison on corruption charges in one of 2 trials after the 2011 uprising that ended his rule. His sons Ala and Gamal each received 4-year jail terms, and 4 other defendants were acquitted. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. Speaker Nabih Berri says tomorrow's parliamentary session to elect a new head of state will be open-ended until the end of President Michel Sleiman's term on the 25th of this month. Maronite organizations warn lawmakers against disrupting the vote and failing to elect a new president on time. And finally, Amnesty International says underfunded medical institutions in Lebanon are incapable or unwilling to treat many Syrian refugees, rendering vulnerable populations at risk of financial ruin, disability, and death. That's it from us here at Future Television. Catch us again tomorrow for more of the world's top stories.